Now move on to an important motion about the health-related effects of electromagnetic fields, and I call upon Tonia Antoniazzi to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm honoured to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Holborn. This Westminster Hall debate is indeed a very timely one. It comes off the back of a historic decision by Glastonbury Council to oppose the rollout of 5G due to a severe lack of evidence about its effect on the health of those living and working around 5G sites. In the words of Martin Paul, Emeritus Professor of Biochemistry at Washington State University, putting in tens of millions of 5G antenna without a single biological test for safety has got to be about the stupidest idea anyone has had in the history of the world. We have seen the rollout of 5G postponed in Brussels when Céline Frémaux, Environment and Energy Minister, identified that it was not compatible with Belgian radiation safety standards. And a planned upgrade to 5G in Geneva was stopped through the application of the precautionary principle until independent findings on possible health damage become available. Now, I was approached by an old friend who is now a constituent about how a sensitivity to electromagnetic fields seriously affects her health and the way she lives her life. Annalie lives in France for part of the year and has to return to Wales as her health deteriorates working as a university lecturer. I was intrigued by the effects and wanted to know more, so I have been in contact with a number of people who either have concerns about the health-related effects or are suffering firsthand. Following discussions with others, I was keen to secure a debate on the subject because the health concerns are being swept under the carpet by the government, and there appears to be an absolute refusal to acknowledge that these health-related effects even exist. To initiate a conversation about electromagnetic sensitivity has had members of my own team and family telling me that it is all made up. That in itself motivated me to keep reading and to speak to as many people who I can in Wales and beyond who are suffering. And what shocked me was the number of people who have ES, who are too afraid to talk publicly about their illness, as they are really wary of being humiliated and ostracised. Electrosensitivity is a symptomatic sensitivity to electric or magnetic fields of any frequency, including radio frequency transmissions. It's a condition first described in 1932. It's when a person's physiology is affected by external electromagnetic fields, giving rise to a spectrum of symptoms, often neurological. It is therefore an illness caused by environmental agents, essentially an environmental toxic pollutant. It's a condition that can arise due to continued exposure to an environment polluted by man-made EM and RF wireless signals at levels at orders of magnitude below heating effects and is well understood in many other countries. Symptoms include headaches, fatigue, disturbed sleep, tingling, pains in limbs, head or face, stabbing pains, brain fog and impaired cognitive function, dizziness, tinnitus, nosebleeds, palpitations and others. But as we have seen already with chronic fatigue syndrome, there was a disbelief about those presenting with symptoms and indeed construed by others as a psychological illness through a lack of knowledge and difficulty to diagnose. I believe that electrosensitivity will be recognised in years to come, hopefully sooner, and that the government will have to own up to their part in that. And I will be honest with you and say that this is not a subject I ever thought I would be standing here talking about. Yet, as a mother, I was always keen to charge my son's phone outside of his bedroom, while never applying the same rule to myself. Parents seem to care more for their children, especially when we hear that masts being put up on primary schools, more recently one in Haringey, they are stopped. And the masts are no longer being put up there. There is something in this. I do worry also about the impact of social media on mental health and the increasing addictive nature of smartphones, which is impacting on the lives of the youngest of children. There is some evidence for effects of radio frequency signals on mental health and behaviour in children and young people. yet they are not currently considered when trying to address the current increase in mental health and behavioural problems in the UK. Minister, can we include the effects of wireless signals when considering solutions for mental health and behavioural problems in children and young people? The recent advice from the UK Chief Medical Officers on screen time and well-being in young people has ignored evidence for the adverse effects of wireless signals. I will on that point.
Can I just ask a question about the wider environmental impact? Because she'll know that 4G is the carbon footprint of all of aviation. 5G is going to be a lot more. And what's more, we're now hearing that 5G will have a detrimental impact on insect life, which globally is decreasing at 2.5% a year. And given the insects are required to pollinate all fruits and vegetables and therefore essential to humanity, doesn't she think that we should apply the precautionary principle here so we know precisely what the impact will be both on insects and on carbon footprint before hurtling ahead for commercial reasons?
I thank my honourable friend for his contribution, and I think that climate change and the insect life is something that we need to take into consideration as well when we are discussing the impact of electrosensitivity, electromagnetic fields. As MPs, we have a duty of care to our constituents. There's no escaping the fact that when questions are posed about the safety of new technologies by MPs, schools, local authorities and others, they are given a standard reply from governments. People who question about the health-related effects of electromagnetic fields are just coming up against a brick wall, and I want to break through that wall and pose a number of questions to the Minister today. I like to think that taking safety into account when developing projects and considering safety and sustainability really is the smart way to move forward into the future. Yes, I will.
Remember the Trade and Industry Select Committee many years ago, we investigated this, and with all sorts of experts, but nobody could come to a conclusion about it. That's not to say my honourable friend is wrong, that's just to say it was looked at about 20 years ago. But the question I was going to ask her, is there any evidence that that can affect the behaviour of animals, for example? Not only human beings, but animals. Is there any evidence of that?
I thank my honourable friend for his contribution, because there is evidence which has been seen in animals. I can't quote it to him now, but I have read about it. And also, the animals don't have the screen time. So when we're talking about the impact of magnetic fields, and we're relating it to maybe smartphones and 5G in the, from now on into the future, the animals aren't sitting there, and there is evidence there. I would have to find it and send it on to him. I shall, yes.
On this point, there is clear evidence that, in particular, with high-frequency 5G, and there's some denial that there may be such high frequency, that there is enormous loss of insect life, and to get the coverage, we need these little pylons or whatever they're called, every 150 metres. There'll be enormous coverage, and if there's substantial damage, there's incredible risk, and surely we should apply the precautionary principle, even if there's all sorts of commercial threats occurring to the government behind closed doors if they don't roll ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I thank my honourable friend. I think we need to look at precautionary principle when we apply anything. And 5G has come upon us so quickly, and it's been embraced by many councils and the government as a solution to connectivity. But I will be totally honest with you, I would rather see fibre broadband in all of fixed wired broadband in all of the houses in my constituency and across Wales, rather than have the masts being put up everywhere and the impact that that will have, just because it seems to be a cheaper solution. Now, I will not accept a response today that electrosensitivity does not exist. There are studies which show that it does. There are many effects that are not all subjective, such as effects on proteins, DNA, cell death, altered brain activity, effects in animals, which my honourable friends have spoken about. And these can be measured and cannot be dismissed as all in the mind. We all know that technology and decisions relating to it can have unintended consequences. and this one such consequence is being discussed today, the impact on our health. Similarly, for the effect on mental health in humans, it could be argued that it may be the online contact or screen time having these effects, but when combined with studies in animals, as we have spoken about, we can see that the signals themselves can have effects. Animals, as I have said, do not look at screens or use social media. In the past, no matter what questions, evidence of concerns that have been put to Public Health England or the Department of Health and Social Care, they have responded with their standard reply. This included them saying that they have thoroughly assessed the evidence in the AGNIR 2012 report. The World Health Organization, International Agency for Research on Cancer, classified all radiofrequency signals as possible human carcinogen in 2011. Based on significant increased risks of gliomas and acoustic neuromas associated with mobile or cordless phone use in humans, as well as animal and mechanistic studies. Subsequent studies have strengthened the evidence in humans and have provided clear evidence of tumours in animals. Some scientists are even calling for the classification to be upgraded to a definite carcinogen. Why then, Minister, has Public Health England removed all mention of the IARC classification for radiofrequency signals from their current website? They inform people about other possible carcinogens. People cannot make informed decisions or protect those they are responsible for if the information is withheld. Will the Minister commit to inform people that all radiofrequency signals are a possible human carcinogen on their website, in their leaflets, in communications and presentations? Following the publication of the paper in Reviews on Environmental Health on the AGNIR 2012 report, AGNIR was quietly disbanded. However, the inaccurate report is still on their website and being used to justify their advice to MPs and the public. When will the 2012 report be retracted due to it being scientifically inaccurate and out of date? The Department of Education in England and Northern Ireland have said that it is the responsibility of schools to carry out risk assessments before technologies are introduced and used. But schools cannot safeguard pupils or staff through a risk assessment if they have been given inaccurate information. Can schools be accurately informed about these risks so that they can fulfil their child's safeguarding responsibilities? Schools and parents could have been informed that wireless signals are a possible human carcinogen, that there is evidence or damage to fertility, and there are effects on the brain that may adversely affect brain development. Schools could have been advised to use wired technologies to prevent possible harm to health and the development of children. The EU sent out a cautionary message about Wi-Fi regarding school children, yet only France removed it from their primary schools. The Cyprus government has produced short and practical videos warning teenagers and pregnant women about the risks of radio frequency signals and offering simple actions. When will children, young people and parents or pregnant women in the UK be offered similar advice so that they can take steps to stay safer? Public Health England and the Department of Health and Social Care, by denying the existence of adverse effects and providing inaccurate information, have prevented the UK public from living and working in safe environments. When will the government listen to the warnings from scientists and doctors to help MPs better protect their constituents? Because we need to be honest about the risks if we are going to have the possibility of developing safer technologies in the future. Don't ignore the fact that people do have ES. These people do exist and their lives are being ruined. Others do not have ES also have genuine concerns about the rollout of 5G. You don't have to suffer to be concerned, because the name 5G is deceptive. It implies a simple upgrade from the current 4G or fourth generation wireless, but 5G, it is so much more than that. It is a massive experiment, and the consequences of these actions are largely unknown. One thing I feel very strongly about is for people with ES, there is no escape. Literally, they're going to have nowhere to go. Can we make safe public spaces and living and working environments so that everyone has somewhere to exist? This is extremely urgent, particularly with the introduction of 5G, smart cities, smart roads, the Internet of Things, thousands of 5G satellites. I'd like to see a government that gives a commitment to creating white zones, where people can go and have respite when they need it, and a government which will pledge to provide up-to-date, transparent and independent research on the impact of electromagnetic fields and replace the AGNIR report from 2012. There is a need to review the science, as no one will disagree how technology moves on at such a quick pace, and there is even more need to keep up to date with the science. And finally, from one of the letters I have recently received, a heartfelt request from a mum in West Wales. I'm told you think the only way forward is a white zone. I agree. But also to get ES recognised as a disability. I've spoken with my MP and he agrees that if ES could be recognised as a disability, other things such as access to education would fall into place. And I agree with Sarah's statement. Her struggle is real, and so are the lives of many people largely ignored and belittled, and also that of my old classmate Annalie, whose life in the past 10 years has dramatically been impacted by electromagnetic fields on her health. We can no longer hide and pretend it's not happening, and this cannot be swept under the carpet, especially in light of future impact of technological advancements at the expense of people and our environment. To conclude, it is evident the government needs to ensure that the research is independent. It needs to recognise electrohypersensitivity as an occupational disease, as a French court did earlier this year, and put guidelines in place for employers to make reasonable adjustments so that their employees can continue to work in a healthy environment. I remember the days of planning to meet someone without a mobile phone to say you were running late or couldn't make it. Advancements in technology have literally swept through our lives, and before I'm accused of being a Luddite, I think that technology is wonderful and offers great many benefits to all. But we cannot continue to deny that for some there is an impact on their health and well-being. This is also not about stopping progress. This is about making sure that there are no health concerns with that technology and about doing what is best for our constituents. Thank you, Mr Hollowborn.